Great. Super excited to be here for another fun and exciting conversation of real life money. I am Jack Gramaudo, financial security advisor, and my lovely counterpart,
I'm
Chris.
Chrysanthia Manuel, residential real estate broker.
Chris, always a pleasure. Great to have you. Thanks for being on the call with me.
Of course.
So in light of our conversations that have been a lot of fun, I must admit, today we thought we were going to get together and have another fun and exciting and just down to earth money, life, investment focused type of conversation. All the while we're always opening, kind of think part of our theme is opening a great bottle of wine and indulging in something fun and nice. So again, yeah, today we'll have fun and talk about some more money and investment related topics. I think you've prepared a couple of different things that you want to go over today, but super excited to be here. Do you want to maybe remind everybody that didn't have a chance or hasn't yet had a chance to watch our last conversation, or just follow some of the snippets from our last conversation, maybe what they missed out on? It might be something of value to them. Big dirty B word. Yes.
That's what Jack calls it, which I just discovered today, which is the budget. So
Yes.
Jack is going
Yes.
to talk to us about budgeting, something that a lot of people shy away from, a lot of people don't want to talk about, but it's something that is so important when we're talking about real estate investing. And so we're looking forward to hearing what Jack has to say about budgeting and how to do it, and what are some good practices as well. And I have a few questions also.
Fantastic. I'm looking forward to sharing, looking forward to your questions. Maybe before we dive into the meat and potatoes of our discussion today, maybe I can share a little bit with you and everybody that's out there watching what we're drinking. Tell you a little bit about the wine that I chose. For those of you that don't know, yes, I am a avid investor. I'm a finance bit of a freak, I guess. I run my own financial security firm. And I'm avid in talking about insurance and investing and everything finance related. But one of my passions and one of my first loves is wine. For those of you that don't know that, I'm actually a certified sommelier in a past life, but a hobby that I have kept very strong in my life. So today, to keep along with our theme of choosing different wines, I wanted to leave France. So we were in France for the last couple of episodes or conversations, and we're leaving France. We're not going far. Another country that I really love. I'm actually Italian myself, so it kind of hits home a little bit more than the French. But today we are in Italy, and I don't know if everybody can see that. Is that good? Am I? Yes, we are in Italy. We are in the region of Piemonte, and we are drinking Paolo Scavino, who is the producer. The name of the producer. Paolo himself is not the producer. It's now his son and his actual daughter, so Paolo's granddaughters, that are the owners and the winemakers at winery Paolo Scavino. But we are drinking their Dolcetto d'Alba 2021. So this is just a really fun, not complicated type of wine. This is really embodying, I think, the power and the elegance of the Piemonte wine growing region. So nestled up in northwestern Italy is this beautiful region, Piemonte, probably better known for the viewers out there for the wines named Barolo and Barbaresco. Those are definitely the two key predominant wines that are made in the area. Lesser known maybe for some of the indigenous grape varietals that are grown in the region, but this is actually one of them. So Dolcetto d'Alba, so it's the Dolcetto grape made in the village of Alba, is what we're drinking, and it's very ripe red fruit. Yes, you have a question?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
My question is, how do you know so much about the vintner? Like you research them, you know that it's the son and the daughter that have taken over, and that the father is no longer. Like, I'm impressed. It's really nice to know.
Thank you. I mean, in this case, I know the family well, not necessarily personally, but I've worked with the wines in the past very closely. I used to serve the wines on a regular basis, not specifically just this one, but many of the wines that the winery makes. So in being able to properly talk about something, I think you have to do your research. You have to do your kind of your back office check and make sure that it also represents the type of person that you are. And when I was, practicing as a sommelier, it was important that I knew a lot about the wineries and how the wineries operated, how they work, their philosophies, their values. And I think just naturally through all that, you get to know the families and, exchanging with the vintners either via email or phone, and even meeting them sometimes when they were in Montreal, or if I was on a trip, in Europe. You just kind of build these relationships.
Very cool. So
So
what are we smelling and what are we tasting?
just a basket full of ripe black cherries and blueberries on the nose, but like almost like candied cherries. It's so elegant, a lot of ripe spices, dark black fruit.
Spices, I feel the spices, yeah.
It's not a wine that spends any time in new oak, so you're not going to have that vanilla caramel touch to it. It's really just a perfect example of ripe red fruit, and just a little bit of a floral, almost herbaceous note on the finish. What I like about it is that it's a really almost rich and full-bodied wine that has a great acidity to it, and almost a gritty little tannin on the finish. So as well as it's great for, an aperitif, if you want to just start the night off with a glass of red wine, if you want to do charcuterie, or even if you're grilling some red meat, it's a really versatile and fun wine. It's not going to break the bank, and it'll give you something fun to talk about at the next wine event that you're hosting, or if you're having people over for dinner. So
for sure. Wow,
cheers.
thank you so much. Cheers.
You're welcome. Cheers. All right, so you want to talk about the big dirty B word, the budget. The budget.
That's what you call it, and I love it.
I do.
Before we get started, I just want to remind everyone who's watching that this is not financial advice. This is not real estate advice. We highly recommend every single episode, and we remind you every single episode that it is absolutely important that you contact a real estate or financial advisor professional in order to have a personalized approach to whatever it is that you need to know about in terms of real estate investing or investing in general. And besides that, Jack is going to talk to us about the budget. So where should we start? First of all, how does one start to do the budget? Because everyone's so scared about it.
Yeah, people don't like it, I think, for two reasons. And I joke, you've heard me say this in the past, I wear two hats as a financial advisor. One is actually a financial advisor, and the other hat that I often have to put on is being a psychologist, because people with money, we make, we're all subject to this. We all make money-based decisions based off emotions, whether it's the way we grew up, the way we were taught, and they're tough decisions. And I think, the budget, most people shy away from doing a budget because they either don't want to face the reality of what they inevitably know that they're going to see, or they're just really, really scared to shed light on some potential type of truth that maybe they know, maybe they don't know, but they're kind of just, sweeping the dust under the rug, so to speak. But I think the importance of a budget is really just being more conscious of what's going on in your money world, right? Where are you spending your money? As an advisor myself, my role is never to, scrutinize and tell people, you shouldn't be spending your money on this, or you should really cut back on your lattes. It's not my style. I like to have a big picture approach as to what's going on in an individual or a couple's, financial well-being, and it starts with the budget. And I say that for the personal side, but the same applies to the corporate side, right? Cash flow statement, understanding where your money is going is super important to know, if you have a healthy business or, financial situation or not. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, the budget is going to tell us where your money is coming from. So where are you earning your money, and where are you spending your money? And most people spend everything that they make, unless they are consciously saving. And I think for the most part, because most people don't necessarily track their expenditures, they earn and they spend, and then they realize, oh, I need money for this, that, or the other. That's when it kind of becomes a bit of a burden. So I like to have a budget on hand. I'm a big believer of doing the budget once a month for everybody that's out there listening. Track your budget and just be a little bit more conscious as to where your money is going on a monthly on a monthly basis, excuse me, just to help you understand that if there is a new priority in your financial well-being, so to tie it into what we're talking about, if you've determined that real estate investing is something that you feel is right for you, I would recommend starting with the budget, because it's going to be important to understand where you may have free cash flow to allocate towards putting additional funds towards the purchase of a property, or if you need to save up some money, how you can accumulate that money, or if you might need to do some work on your financial well-being before making that leap into buying an investment property, then ultimately knowing where you need to spend some time making some of those corrective type actions into your budget. So yeah, that's I guess in a nutshell is what's I think important for me from a financial aspect, important about the budget.
So are you going to sort of give us an idea of a budget? Like, do you have something that you can show us to sort of give someone an idea of how to start tracking?
Yeah, for sure. And what I could do is actually I can bring something up on the screen in a couple of seconds. And I think essentially what it's going to help people see and realize is that obviously everybody's financial situation is different, but there are a lot of steadfast consistencies in where we spend our money. Rent, mortgage, those types of things, groceries. Most people have car payments of some type, whether it's a lease or a finance. And it's just really understanding. Pardon?
Or repairs or bus pass if they're still using public transport.
Correct. And I've put together, I've compiled a document that's, it's an Excel spreadsheet that is workable. So it's not set in stone. It can be modified and changed and updated. And I think it's really important to know that, you can add things, you can remove things from this tool, but ultimately what it's going to help you understand is this is how much money I'm making every month. This is how much money I'm spending every month. Is there a difference? And I think most people shy away from doing the budget because they're either spending everything that they're earning, or they may be even spending a little bit more than they're earning. And that's how people are getting into credit card debt, line of credit debt, those types of things, right? We live in a society that likes to kind of keep up with the Joneses, and I'm generalizing for a lot of people, but unfortunately, the budget will kind of put things into check. And I think naturally, as human beings, if you have made a conscious effort to say, this is a priority in my financial well-being, you're naturally going to make the corrections yourself. You don't necessarily need to be told by a professional, albeit I do make recommendations and say, I think there's room to be made in correcting this and this and this in those departments. But ultimately, people start to make conscious efforts on their own naturally once they have a full picture of the truth in their budget, right?
Okay. So what I'm mostly interested in seeing in this budget is in terms of the real estate investing portion of it.
Yep.
Because it's one thing to speak with your clients or the people that you're helping about how to manage their own budgets, but it's another thing to be managing a property because there's an income generated from that property as well. And I don't think that this is the time that we're going to be speaking necessarily about tax planning specifically, but we will have another time a discussion about the tax planning once a person does own a revenue property or an investment property. But I think that what I'm most interested in seeing is what type of expenses do we track on an investment property and what does it look like? So share your screen. I'm excited.
Right. So it's you're talking about the kind of like the budget within the budget. So we have, an individual's personal budget where we track, if they're earning money from a job that they have, or if they take money from a business that they own and operate. You're going to have that income, but obviously the big value in investment in obviously real estate is that you can have passive income. So you're going to generate positive cash flow if the property is managed properly. So it's adding additional sources of income to your personal budget. So now you're not necessarily trading your time for money. You're essentially making your money earn you money and put money back into your pocket by owning real estate, real estate that generates income, right? And that budget is obviously very important to manage within your overall budget, the budget of the actual property. Let's say if you have a duplex or a threeplex, that has its own budget that you have to manage and oversee to make sure that it's profitable and not taking money from your pocket, right?
So it's a good idea that a person is not only going to have their own personal budget, but in addition to that, have a budget for the property that they're managing, whether, hopefully it's generating income, but even if it's not generating income, it's important to know where you're spending the money, what is the revenues, and what are the future expenses as well, in order to be able to put money aside in case there are repairs to do.
Very, very much so. And I think it's definitely part of, proper property management and ensuring that you're managing a sound investment. It's, owning a revenue generating property is like owning a business. You've spent money to purchase it, and now that investment has to put money back into your pocket. And your only way you're going to actually know if it's going to be profitable or not is ultimately understanding, the cash flow statement that property is going to generate. So what it earns minus what it costs to run and operate. If there's a positive surplus, then that's great. That's what we want. But if there's a negative deficit, then no bueno, right?
No bueno.
No bueno.
However, I do want to mention,
yes,
when managing a revenue property, there are ways to cut costs. So, for example, people who have a property that's a little bit older may want to do some of the work themselves when it comes to maintaining the property. So, I'll give you an example: is if you actually have a triplex or even a duplex, and there's grass. So one way of making sure that the lawn care maintenance is being taken care of is you can provide a lawnmower, for example, for your tenants to use, and ask the tenants to, mow the lawn themselves. However, in some cases, the tenants are not very apt to do that, and so sometimes, rather than giving a discount on the rental amount that they're paying you, maybe the benefit is to charge them that amount, or collect it through rent, and then have an expense of having landscapers come, once a week, once every 2 weeks during the summertime to mow the lawn, because it does have to be maintained. You don't want to get a ticket from the city. The same goes with snow removal. If a tenant wants to spend a little bit less on their rent, they can remove the snow themselves from the driveway or from the front steps. But on the flip side, if you want to earn a little bit more and hire a company, that's a write-off. So you can always include that within the rent. And sometimes it's more attractive for a tenant, and sometimes it's a little less attractive to a tenant. It really depends on what type of property you're renting out. That was just my little added real estate part.
No, great. You're absolutely right. I think we're definitely going to reserve a conversation for diving a little bit deeper into managing the efficiency of a property. But no, those are very important points that a future real estate investor definitely needs to take into consideration. So let me actually share my screen, and what I'll do is I'll bring up just a void blank type of cash flow report that I use with all my clients. Like I said earlier, it's definitely something that can be modified, updated, and revised on a very frequent basis. I recommend that all my clients do this on a month-to-month basis, just to understand and track their budget, especially if they're new to budgeting and they've never done it before. I think it's really important at the beginning to always be doing this. So essentially what you have here is a high-level summary report. Ultimately, this budget in question is not filled out, so it's not going to show us anything, but you'll have your total income, any regular savings that you're doing, any expenses, and then after all that, you're going to have a very clear understanding of whether you're saving money at the end of the month, breaking even, or if you're in a deficit, thus meaning you're spending more than you're actually earning. So what that means is that right here on the left, we're going to have individuals input their income. So income such as employment income. Now, if you have a spouse or a partner that you want to include as well into this budget, so I'll take a family, a couple that are saving to purchase, well, they may have two sources of revenue. If you have children, then you're most likely receiving child benefits from both governments, both the Quebec Family Allowance and the Canadian Child Benefit from the federal government. You would want to definitely include any bonuses or commissions that you can count on. For some of my clients, we're definitely taking into consideration QPP and old age security. So those are, government pensions. Maybe not the focus of our conversation today, but nonetheless, definitely something to consider if you're receiving them. And then you have your investment income. So if you are fortunate enough to have an investment that generates enough income that you can draw on and you're using as part of a revenue stream, then great, we would include that there. For example, if you already own one revenue property or two, and that property is generating a positive cash flow, so there's a surplus at the end of the month for that specific property, then we would include it right here. I know I have clients that earn passive income through royalties or trailing commissions that they would put here. And if you have a small side hustle, you might want to include that as well. So that's really
I love that. Sorry, I love that you called it a side hustle.
definitely. And I'm an adamant believer that, most people will always come back to trimming the budget and, well, where can I spend less? Where can I spend less? And that's one mentality. I'm of the mentality that also says that you can earn more. You don't have to necessarily always be trimming and cutting away. Why not get into the abundance mentality and say, well, you can go out and actually earn more and find more creative ways of generating more income? And I'm a big believer of that mentality. Yes, I think it's very important and sound to be mindful of where your money is going, but I also believe that if you want to have a better lifestyle and give yourself that, you can always be very creative and earn more money and more in different ways, right? Any questions?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to test your budget.
Go ahead.
Where are the gifts? Gifts,
Where?
Christmas, birthdays.
Yeah, great question. So without necessarily going into this line by line, you definitely, I haven't overlooked, I don't think very many things, or at least not that I'm aware of, or else I would have included it. But, you're asking me about gifts. So gifts can be Christmas gifts.
Yeah.
And we have that right here, so if you're a parent like we both are, and I have 4 children, you have a couple of children as well, you would want to include it here. Now what's fun is that you can toggle these, right? So if you're doing gifts on a monthly basis, well, we can flip that into a monthly basis, and that applies for all the cells on this Excel spreadsheet. You don't have to be a wizard in Excel to be able to utilize this tool. It's very user friendly. It's actually quite fun to use.
I have another comment. So I love the fact that you've got the faith, charity, education, politics, the giving section. I think that's really useful because it's not included in enough budgets, and we always choose a few charities that we give to every year, whether it's through my corporation or whether it's on a personal basis. So it's nice to have the charity that you've included in the budget. I have another question, because for me it's a little bit difficult to understand. Sometimes the clothing is a week, sometimes the sports teams it's a year, and sometimes it's a month. So how does it all get calculated at the end? Is it on an annual basis? Or how do we differentiate between all of it? Because it feels like it's all mixed together, even though it's very specific into categories. I'm just not sure I follow.
Yeah, so everything that you put in, so for example, I'll use the example of groceries right up here, right? So typically most families will pay for their groceries on a weekly basis. So, average family of 4 right now might be, $250 a week that they're spending on groceries, or around there. Now, if you look up here, what happens is that gets calculated on a monthly basis. So yes, the week is 52 times a year. Annually is 13,000, and then that gets brought down to a monthly basis. So this is always going to be brought back down to a month-to-month basis.
Okay.
Is it necessarily going to be the exact snapshot of all 12 months? No, definitely not, because there are some expenditures that you have that are weekly, some that are bi-weekly, some that are monthly, some that are biannually, some that are once a year, for example, taxes, municipal and school taxes, we pay those once. So you would enter all of that into the tool, and based on the period of which you're making those financial obligation or those commitments, I should say, then the tool is always going to bring it back to a month-to-month basis. So you're going to have a very good snapshot of what you're earning on a monthly basis, what you're spending, what you're saving, and then where you land on a positive or negative side of the coin. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And my last question about this budget.
Go ahead.
We have an overview here. It feels like an overview for the entire year.
Yes.
But I'm curious to know, with this entire overview, what are we looking at on a monthly basis? Are we updating this on a monthly basis? Are we Like, how is it that you track month to month? Are we looking at statements? Like, what are you doing?
Right. I think so. It's a couple of different things that we're doing. So yes, I think getting into the habit of doing this on a month to month basis is a great exercise. I usually at the start of any new month recommend that people will sit down and print out their all their credit card not receipts, excuse me, transaction summaries, their account statements from their bank accounts. So if you have a joint bank account, if you have an individual bank account, print those all up and just really start getting more conscious as to where you're spending. Start tallying that up on a month to month basis. This tool is, it's very easy to use, so you can save it. So for example, if we're in the month of September, you can save September's version, and then you can take it back in October, and then you can work on it from there, making those corrections and making the updates necessary. What it's essentially going to tell you is, okay, are you making money every month? Are you breaking even, or are you spending more money than you owe, or than you earn, excuse me. If the latter of that is the case, then we obviously have some work to do on the expenditure side, and we have to make sure that you're paying down your debts, especially your high interest debts. But if you are generating a positive surplus, just to kind of tie it back into our real estate focused conversation, then that positive surplus can be used to allocate towards potentially saving for a down payment for a potential property. So circling back to our examples from last time, if you're interested in buying a pre-construction condo, let's say, and that 5% is all you need to put down as a down payment for the reservation of that pre-construction condo, and 5% in this case is $25,000. Well, if you're generating $1,000 of positive cash flow every month, that means it's going to take you a little bit over 2 years to save up that down payment, right? So that's one example. You may also be able to purchase a property leveraging the equity that you have in an existing real estate holding, and perhaps that real estate property that you're purchasing, that future property, may not put money into your pocket. There may be actually a deficit. So after collecting all the rents and after paying all the expenses, you may be short, let's say $500. Well, if you have an extra $1,000 in your free cash flow in your personal budget, well, now you actually only have 500 because you're putting in $500 into that new investment, right? So it gives us a sense of understanding what we can do with your money and where we can allocate as per your financial priorities, right? And it's kind of that tool that we use to dictate where we want to start planning and what we can plan on first.
I don't know if you mind. Can you just share your screen once more, because I want to have a look at I'll ask you a question in a minute.
Go ahead.
Okay. So if you scroll down on this, do you have a section for the revenue property? Once you have the revenue property, where? Oh, okay, it's there. Perfect.
Of course, absolutely. So right here, everything below this yellow line is going to be focused on if you're looking at purchasing or have recently purchased or own already a revenue property. And this would be everything that is obviously related to the revenue property. Now, I'm kind of generalizing it. There could be different scenarios in different cases, but for the most part, you're going to have a mortgage. You may have some debt associated to a line of credit as well associated to that revenue property. You'll have your taxes, the electricity, if that's something that you're paying for. You may have propane, if there's propane, water tank rentals, for example, if you're providing internet, snow removal, lawn maintenance, like you mentioned earlier. So all those types of things. And I think one that's really important is the general maintenance, allocating a percentage of the value of the building towards future expenses. It could be large expenses like a roof, changing windows, for example, those types of things. The administration, and then the personal, the professional dues that you may need to be spending on for professional advice, such as legal advice, whether it's to draw up leases, for example. You're probably going to want an accountant that's going to be managing this at come tax time for you, especially if you're doing this on a personal level and not you're not doing it in a business, right? So yeah, that's what I would allocate towards that, and anything related to the revenue property, we would be putting it in right here.
So the general maintenance, the 2%, is that because you had a conversation with me, or is it because you already knew?
So I always had that in there, but we definitely have talked about this recently. I know you have a very, very strong opinion about general maintenance. Maybe I'll let you share that.
Um, so actually, I'm just happy to see it in your budget, just
Yep.
because it's something that I always try to stress to the people that I'm working with, because sometimes it goes, sometimes people just forget about it. They just say, "Hey, I have the building, and that's all I have to do. I just have to have it, hold it, rent it, and we're done." But it's not the case at all. We do have to continue to invest in a property in order to maintain it. But
Hmm.
it's important to mention that in some cases, that 2% is not necessary. And I want people to understand that aspect of it. Because if you have a brand new property, for example, and you've just rented it out, well, for the first 5 years, there is actually a building warranty for the exterior of the building. So if we're looking at a brand new condo that has just been delivered, the
Hmm.
interior of a condo has a warranty for 1 whole year, and the exterior of the building, so the windows, the foundation, the roof, anything in the envelope of the building, or the main systems of the building, like the plumbing or the electricity, that has a 5 year warranty. It's the Garantie de Construction Résidentielle, so the GCR.
Yeah.
And that just means that you're not going to have to put the full 2% in for the next 5 years. All you have to do is maybe put 1,000, 2,500 in an account on the side, but not a full 2% of what the
Yeah.
property is worth, because there's a warranty that's attached to that. It's a 5 year warranty for the envelope of the building, and it's a 1 year warranty for the interior of the building.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we can extrapolate on that. Maybe not as much today, but for a future conversation. But we also have to factor in, and something that I haven't included in that is vacancy rate. If you own a property with 4 units, so a fourplex, for example, and there goes, I don't know, 3 months out of the year where one of those units is not rented, well, that's not rent that you're collecting, even though you have the expenses associated to the building. So that 2% is a it's a flexible 2% that can be allocated to a few different areas of the building, but that's definitely a conversation that we want to go deeper into, and a potential client would also want to go deeper into with a mortgage broker, and helping understand the potential of a specific building, because banks will be using different charts to calculate that, and helping an investor understand that is, I think.
Yeah, it's definitely a very good point to consider the vacancy rate,
Yeah.
because depending on the time of year that you purchase the property, it also might have an impact on its rentability if you are looking to get a tenant during that time. It's not easy to rent something in December, but in the month of May, June, July, it's much more easy to rent something, especially in Montreal.
There you go. Absolutely. So, all very important things to keep into consideration. But I think today we wanted to just talk a little bit more about the importance of budgeting, both on a personal level, and then eventually including if there is revenue added from a real estate holding that's going to be helping your bottom line. Great. My philosophy has always been, if you don't have to trade your time for money, so actually showing up and working to earn a living, that's obviously it's very noble, very respectable. But if you had a choice, and long term you can create a strategy where ultimately your money is being traded for assets that generate money for you. So now you don't have to necessarily show up and work to earn a paycheck, or to receive money, but your money is making you money so that you can draw from that to be able to live the lifestyle that you have. I think long term, that's definitely it's a very attractive type of lifestyle, because now you don't have to necessarily get up and go do something that you might not necessarily love or enjoy, which I think is the case for a lot of people, unfortunately, out there.
Yeah, I mean, definitely being able to get up and make your own schedule and show up when you need to show up, or when you feel like showing up, being there for your family, being
Yeah.
there for your own personal well-being, whether it's going and golfing for some
Yeah.
people, whether it's working out every morning, or just taking care of your health, your family, your parents, your children. I think it's much more attractive to be able to set your own schedule
Yeah.
and have the money or the investments that you've put in place work for you, so that you don't have to work so hard. So my
Exactly.
philosophy in real estate has always been, work smarter, not harder.
Yeah.
And it's not to say that I don't work hard, because I work so hard.
We do, absolutely.
But the idea is always, let's use the real estate to work for us, right?
For sure. And we've had this conversation, not necessarily, online, but we've taken this conversation offline a lot, is that it's not something that happens from one day to the next. You don't just snap your fingers and have that passive income to, do all of those beautiful things that you just mentioned. But you have to put a plan in place. If you're 35, is it realistic to think by 50 you can have that? Absolutely. Absolutely. But you have to want it. And you have to understand that there are sacrifices that are going to be associated to giving yourself that financial freedom down the road. You can't have it all. For at least not for anybody that I know. There's not a unlimited source of money coming in. Everybody works hard in different ways, but ultimately, I think you can, if you want to consciously set out on the path of saying, well, I do want to shift my revenue sources from today being primarily earned income that I have to trade my time for money for, versus over time grow your passive income so that at one point, yes, you can still work and you're probably going to be working and managing your assets, but ultimately you're going to have reached a point where you can live a comfortable lifestyle based off of the money that your money is making. And that's
examples of the ways that you could be spending your time rather than working for money. Opening up a dog shelter, taking care of dogs. That's one way.
Yeah, for sure.
Being a sommelier in a restaurant that you potentially own, or in a cafe, and spending your days opening wine and talking to your various clients about what type of wine they're enjoying and they're about to enjoy. What else? Traveling.
Absolutely.
Is always a good one.
Yeah.
Very much.
I mean, just spending more time with your kids.
Absolutely.
One thing that was really important for me, after looking back and kind of putting my life in a certain perspective with this whole pandemic that we've gone through, was, just being around more for my kids. Not that I didn't do that before, but I had the flexibility and I had more time because of the pandemic now, which was a blessing in disguise. And, just being there for pickups and drop-offs if you have young children, like those were precious moments for me that now I don't want to say I take them for granted, but you're there, you're around, and it's lovely because you can essentially you can plan your schedule around what you want to do. And yes, you're still managing and you're working for yourself, but it's a different type of work related stress, and it's a different way to manage on a week to week, month to month, year to year basis, and it's, I think, very rewarding.
It is definitely to be able to have the time for the things that are the most important. And I feel what you mean about the pandemic, because I feel like although it was a very difficult time for all of humanity and all the entire world to go through, and different countries went through different things at different periods of time, but in my case it was just the fact of having my husband home, and he started working from home, and I got to see him so often, and he's still working from home. And it's a pleasure because he could just sit outside, walk and get the kids, come back, and it was sort of like we'd never done that before. But it's fun. It's nice to like just go on a walk, pick up the kids, and then come home and then make them a snack, and then set them up with their homework. Are you guys good? Yeah. Okay. Then go back and we do some work, and it's just kind of it's a nice feeling to know that things are being taken care of with your work, rather than having to say, okay, it's 5 o'clock, I'm allowed to leave, and then rush home, rush dinner, rush homework, rush bed, and then your day's done.
Yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't agree with you more on all of that. It's having that flexibility and being able to manage your schedule as needed, and not necessarily being a slave to corporate America or corporate Canada, however you want to look at it.
Right.
It's just being able to say I'm free. I have control over my own destiny and my now, right? And you're doing it for whatever reason you want to do it for. We have our shared goals and ambitions, and I'll say dreams, but dreams are nothing without a plan and a goal ultimately. But you have to work towards it. And I think having passive income is, I don't want to say it's a no-brainer, but it's a no fucking brainer.
No swearing. My son's
Sorry,
not.
sorry, you're right. You're right. Sorry.
I think that is like a really great way for us to sort of complete this conversation,
Yep.
because ultimately we're here to talk about real life money, the real estate life, how to plan it, and money. So,
Yeah.
you know, having like sort of an insight into both of our lives, both of our inputs on real estate and money, it was really good to be able to have a look at a real budget and to understand, you know, that I think what I can take back from this is that it's not an easy task. It's a habit that needs to be created. Someone has to take the time to really, you know, focus on it once a month, like you said. And I think that it's inspiring for a lot of the viewers or the listeners that are with us to just know that, okay, this is a real thing. It's not something that they necessarily teach you in school, but it's something that successful people are going to have to do, right?
Yes, absolutely. And look, you know, if I can end off on one thing, if you've never done a budget, and you're scared to, I get it. Like, and it's okay, it's normal. But whatever is going to happen from that budget planning process is going to lead you in the next direction, and that's going to be a better direction than where you currently are and don't want to necessarily be anymore. So yeah, the first budget is going to be the one that stings the hardest, and it's going to hurt probably the most. But most people are pleasantly surprised, and their kind of takeaway is, oh, thought it was going to be worse than that. Yeah, it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, and I think that's important, and we have to focus on the positives, because whatever the outcome of the budget is, regardless, there are always solutions. And that's, I think, what people sometimes they don't necessarily realize, or they don't understand what the solutions are. And it's okay that you don't know what the solutions may be, but that's why I think it's important, you know, like you said early on in the conversation, seek professional guidance.
Yeah.
If anybody has any questions, obviously we're always around.
Yeah.
Easy to connect with. Chrys, as usual, we've come to the end of my glass of wine, so I think that that signals that this conversation is going to be going to bed. So ultimately, always a pleasure getting together and having a great conversation with you. But let me know, what are you thinking about our next conversation? What do you want to chat about next?
Yeah, so for our next conversation, I think that, you know, we've talked about the budget, we've talked about the pre-approval. I think that it's really important to look at what expenses someone is going to be looking at in terms of purchasing the property. But as investors, we also have to look at the expenses when we're selling the property, because ultimately you are going to be selling the property at a certain time to make a giant capital gain, hopefully. Not just the revenue generating portion of it, but also the sales portion of it. So I want to look at, you know, welcome taxes. I want to look at what different ways. I want to look at, you know, the inspection costs. I want to look at what is the amount that you're going to need to pay in order to purchase a property, but also what do you need to pay when you're ready to sell that property? Because I think that it's often overlooked when we sell the property. We're just thinking about the here and the now. Maybe in 5 years, 10 years, when you're ready to sell, it's going to be different expenses for the seller. But at least if it's going to be a quick flip, we want to know what it's going to cost us in a year or two. So I'm excited to talk about that, because it's something that I like to go over with buyers, very, very detail oriented. And that's going to be our next topic of conversation. So
already looking forward to it.
Our next bottle of wine, our next conversation.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, listen, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.
Take care.